Let's hit it. Hello, Kriste. Kriste, welcome to the US Trail Running Conference.
Thank you so much for having me, Terry.
It's, it's a pleasure. It's so good to see you again. Yeah, you were a real hit at the conference last year. So I'm really glad that although you can't be there in person this year, that you can join us virtually. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to have a conversation with you.
Thank you. I mean, I am thrilled to be connected however I can, and I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to be there in person as hoped, because it made a major impact on me last time. So
good. Thank you. Kriste, so your first question for that conversation for us. Are you ready?
No.
Okay. All right. You are a passionate activist in terms of raising awareness of the importance of running, and trail running in particular, for people of color. What was it that started you on this journey?
You know what? I don't even think of myself necessarily primarily as an activist for people of color. However, as a Black woman and someone who is vocal and visible, I kind of slot quite naturally into that space, and I feel comfortable there because I feel like it's so important to not only advocate for our needs, for my needs, but also to like express my concerns and let people know about, you know, my own journey and my own experience, because I feel like it shifts the narrative when we're able to include our own stories into that dominant narrative, right? So when I add my story, when you add your story, when, you know, anybody who's watching this adds their story, it gives a fuller picture of what's going on in trail running, of who is out there and who is trying to impact the space in a different way. And so I think as part of my interests in advocating for myself and for people like me who I have seen and talked to and can relate to, who have said, you know, oh, there's, you know, that's not for me, or that's for, you know, other people out there, you know. So being able to speak directly to that and having had experience, you know, with that kind of perspective, I feel like that is just a natural extension. You know, activism is just sort of a natural extension of who I am and how I show up. So it's really quite an organic experience for me.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you're finding lots of opportunities to actually share your voice within the industry. You know, so we were just talking a few moments ago about, you know, Find Your Stride and ultra running. You know, but that's not the only one, and but it's wonderful that you've not necessarily set out down this road with that intention, but these are the things that are coming to you.
Yes, and again, I think there's a convergence of so many different things happening right now. The industry, such as it is recognizing the shortfall of representation of all the people who are out enjoying the trails and enjoying, you know, these various activities that we all love so much. And so to see people in these different communities who are actively doing it, I think the companies are smart to say, hey, are you interested in, or we would like to collaborate with you, you know, would you be interested in working together? And so, you know, in my situation, because you know, I'm also a writer and I'm very active on social media. And well, you know, I will kind of couch that in saying I love storytelling. So I write a lot, I take a lot of pictures, and I happen to be out on the trails a lot of the time. And so that's how, you know, people often find me, is because, you know, maybe they've seen me literally on the trails, because I'm hard to miss, or they've seen me, you know, on social media. And so I welcome it because it's not only about, you know, Kriste's going to say something and speak for the race. That's not it at all. But it's like, you know, I am going to keep engaging people in conversation around this sort of stuff. I'm also going to continue, you know, sharing an experience that isn't widely heard. Now, my experience isn't representative of all people of color or of all Black people or of all Black women, but it's definitely one that I think is you know, important to share. Our stories matter.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm really glad that your voice is getting out there, Kriste, because it's a really important thing. So next question for you, kind of segueing into what you just covered to some extent. Why do you think that trail running doesn't attract more athletes of color?
You know, one of the things, I think I shared this with you before, but one of the things some of my own family members said when I started, you know, sharing my stories and sharing pictures and stuff was, why are you always out there? Be
Mm,
careful. Black people don't do that. Why are you chasing the bears? And so over time, as I continued to do it and they saw other people going out with me, they saw me leading and speaking and talking about it and you know, devoting so much of my life to it,
mm,
they had to kind of dismantle their own ideas about being out in nature and the benefits of it, you know, because it was it was easy to internalize this story that said, oh, we don't, you know, we don't do that just because, you know,
mm,
maybe we're not so visible, right? And
right.
so being out there, being able to kind of break that down just by showing up and doing what I love has been huge. Now, before I go on, I forgot the question.
Oh, okay.
The question, because I
I'll
am
just
going.
I'll just remind you. Okay, why do you think trail running doesn't attract more athletes of color? Yeah,
Okay, yes. Okay, I see where I took a turn. So
yeah. No,
I think
it was
the
all linked.
well, you know, the reason I part of it I think is because for trail running, it's really quite a niche activity, isn't it? You know,
Mm,
because people on the road, I mean, you're driving around doing your errands or whatever, you're going about your life on a day-to-day basis. You see runners, road runners all the time.
yeah,
And so it's normalized that way. And
yeah.
so you know, there's no question about how you do it or who's doing it because you see them very easily. And with trail running, we're often, you know, after we get out of sight from the trailhead, you don't really see us for
Right.
one. And for where we live in Colorado, you know, it's in the mountains. And so for
Mm,
people who are not accustomed to getting out into the mountains because of real or perceived fear, then
mm,
they're less inclined to go out on the trails. And there is sometimes not a real warm or feeling of welcome
okay. Yeah.
to these kind of sports. And so for, you know, for example, you look at, you know, rock climbing. And when I first started to see people, you know, outside on, you know, rock climbing or even in climbing gyms, it seemed like this kind of closed club. Like, how do you do it? How do you learn this stuff?
Mm,
We're gonna get in. You know, nobody's saying, oh, you don't, you know, we don't let you in here. But
right.
there didn't seem to be a real kind of invitation or easy entree into the sport. And
Yeah.
so rock climbing is even, you know, as much or more visible than trail running. And so trail running just doesn't really register, I think, with people who aren't already active runners or who aren't already, you know, avid hikers or outdoors people. The other
Yeah.
thing about trail running is I think we don't really announce so much that we want to bring a lot of people out into the trails because you know, it's a sort of respite or a haven, for many of us to get out and explore and be kind of alone or in a small kind of clutch of people on the trails, so it's not trail running. The trail running community, in my experience, is not actively advertising in general because we just don't seem to. So I think there are a lot of different factors, that don't bring people of color out in droves.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Thank you. Thank you. Good answers. So I'm kind of leading on from that then, and this is something that we spoke about at the conference last year, but is there anything that you can see that race directors can do to attract more Black American runners, particularly women, to come to their races that they're not doing now?
I think it's really important. I'm a big relationships person.
Mm-hmm.
And I I think it's so important to get to know people, to go where people are. Where are there, people running, women running, people of color running? What organizations are there, and forging inroads that way and starting to really communicate with people on an individual level and also at the organizational level. So that might require a little bit of research, a little bit of, going. I'm going to be punny here a minute. Going the distance, to
We love doing that.
to connect with people. So, for example, having met you, we have a relationship. And so, we're in communication about different things. And if there's something that is, there's an opportunity for us to connect or do something together,
Mm.
I'll call you up, you call me up. We have a relationship and a baseline understanding of like what we're doing and who we are in the community and how we want to be of service. And so that goes a long way.
It does.
And yeah. And I will say, like, I started when I moved to Colorado, I started running with a group of women who are Black, and we were running on the roads. And I cannot get any of them. Well, there's one who I can get to join me on trails. And, and it's not for everybody. But the thing is that if there were a certain environment of openness or a feeling that, you're welcomed to come in, then, we wouldn't have this feeling of like exclusivity, because it would be, you know what I mean? And it's not that trail running or race directors or the sport of running itself needs to solve racism. It's that we need to, in my opinion, really embrace each other as full human beings and understand the um, the harms that we encounter, the exclusion by default, which means that we have to, work a little harder to chip away at our preconceived ideas, on all sides. So I think it's sort of a holistic kind of road or pathway that we need to take, because it's on so many different levels, Terry. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, true, true. So there's a big difference between, I don't think that trail running as a sport has been explicitly, stopping, getting in the way of diversity. But at the same time, there hasn't been an explicit inclusion. So that invitation that you're talking about, that deciding, creating the intention of because we want to have more athletes of color, then we need to make that connection and create the invitation. So just you and I connecting last year for the conference, then that came out of me making the decision to have diversity and inclusion as the theme for the conference last year. And then we connected, and it was like we had kind of one conversation or an email, and then it was like, okay, it's like I want to invite this woman to come.
And I was like, I want to be there.
I want to be there. And it's like, there wasn't any, it wasn't like it was a difficult process in that sense. So I think sometimes, it can also be, from my perspective as a white guy sitting in here, as that's the majority of trail runners. Then it's I think sometimes our kind of preconceptions create obstacles for us getting connected together, and it's like, forget that. Why do we need to listen to that anymore?
Yeah, well, it takes some real effort too, and I want to say two things here, at least two things. One,
okay.
meeting so many wonderful people last year at the conference, and then following up and learning more about them. It just felt so wonderful to be in the same space with everybody and to meet these hugely talented and ridiculously humble people. I mean, it was amazing. I loved it. And it changed something in me, and I will be forever grateful for that. The other thing though is that the first time I went to a trail running clinic, I will say I started to like go to these different clinics and like read and see who was doing what, and go to the different running stores and listen to people, because we have just such a wonderful array of professional and top tier athletes, trail runners here who will come to a local running store and share their knowledge and experience, and that's great. So the first trail running clinic I went to, there was some international handful of trail rock stars, men, and they were leading this thing, and I was like, and I reached out to the store ahead of time, or to the organizers ahead of time. Is this okay for beginners? Because I'm not experienced. I don't know. Sure, come on. It's like just so kind of casually, like, yeah. And so I got there, and it took everything in me to show up, because I'm like, oh, these are, I don't know how many are going to be super fast people or professionals. They're going to accommodate like my basic questions. And so I was really intimidated. I had to do a lot of self-talk to even get myself to the clinic. And I got there, it was several hours. We talked, we ran, we had lunch, and I didn't know anyone. And I was still incredibly intimidated, and I was practically on the brink of tears because I didn't want to speak up and ask questions, because it seemed like everybody else knew what was going on. Everybody else was white, and everybody else, but now ultimately it was fine. I wasn't like left in the dust. Nobody, was rude to me. But the thing is that was a Herculean effort for me to just show up in the store, at the clinic, and I'm relatively outgoing.
Yeah, you are.
And so, and so the thing is that it wasn't overtly racism or exclusion that was kind of creating this barrier, these series of barriers that I had to keep jumping over to even show up. But it was internalized thoughts about, oh, not being accepted, or I'm going to be scrutinized because I don't know what I'm doing, or nobody's going to really be welcoming to me because, and so there are all these thoughts. And then who's to say what the other people there were thinking?
Thinking, yeah, yeah,
Maybe they didn't want to come forward because, oh, we don't want to seem like we're, pandering or talking down to her, or we don't know what she knows, or, and so, like you said, yeah, it shouldn't be so hard, but we all have to do some lifting, and some removing of the blocks so that we can really, come toward each other, because we all have a lot to learn from each other, and this is a great opportunity to grow the community.
wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. Well, Kriste, that is a beautiful place to end this conversation. So thank you. I think that's a really I don't think there's any better way to end this conversation. I think that's a great finale. Kriste, thank you so much for this opportunity. Great to see you. I look forward to seeing you again in person soon. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. And love the work that you're doing. And I'm just so proud of you.
Thank
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the same, Terry, and whoever is watching, thank you for being part of this amazing community. It feels great to just be with you. So I appreciate it very
All
much.
right. Cool. Kriste, take care. We'll be in touch soon.
Okay, bye now.
Bye bye.